Super Spy. It's about 6 different characters set in World War II in Europe. Each of the 6 characters is a spy. Some of the spies like being spies. Some of them want to get out of that life. So there's a mother with a child that's in Germany. She's just trying to get out of there, but she sort of gets roped into espionage. Then there's a guy who thinks he's really great. He's the super spy, and his coworkers name him the super spy, but it's almost more of a joke because he's not really that good. And then there's a couple other guys that kind of stumble around and try to do what they can without getting hurt. But each chapter, it's 30 chapters in the book, and each chapter is sort of a self-contained little mini story. But then as you go along, you see how the chapters sort of intertwine, and then characters that may never meet end up doing things that impact another person they'll never see, but has good and bad effects on them. And then by the end of the book, sort of ties everything together, and there's like a big ending and an explosion. There's the mother, and then she's actually married to a German officer, so she's in a position to be, a good spy and get all this information. But again, she's got a kid, and she doesn't want to do it. She gets recruited by the English. She gets recruited to do this, send this information, and she actually sends it by sort of a Morse code that she hangs out the laundry. So she put the laundry out in a certain order, and then there's a guy on the street who looks up and then sees her message and writes it down and then sends it off to the guys in England. So that's one of the characters. Another of the characters is a guy that sort of worked in the office, had a desk job. He gets recruited to go into Spain and then meet this dancer character, who the dancer is sort of his informant. And in the course of that time, he sort of falls for her in a way, but she doesn't want anything to do with him, and then he kind of messes things up. I don't want to blow that part of the story because it's a big surprise in the story, but again, there's fun things there where the dancer character sort of relays her messages through her dancing, and she can send these messages just by doing a certain dance. And I'm trying to think of another character. Gray Sparrow is one of them, and he's sort of the guy who screws up at the beginning of the book, and then his informant, or the person that runs the safe house, gets killed, and then he feels responsible. So for the whole book, he sort of has that haunting him, and then he's sort of battling that the whole time, and he's kind of a control freak, and he's trying to maintain control of his life while living a lie, pretty much. Boy, I read a lot of history books. I got one book that's just like sort of like a timeline of World War II from beginning to end. So everything in the book actually could happen at the time it happened, where it happened, based on this timeline I used. And then I also went to the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. There's lots of good stuff there. I read everything I could on spies, and there's one story in the book that is actually based on something that really happened. And it's a guy that, an English officer who, I'm blowing sort of the surprise of the story, but I'll go ahead and do it. But he died, and they took his body and they loaded his jacket up with fake code books, dumped him in the river where they knew the Germans would find him, or hoped that he would float up and they would find him. Germans actually did find him, got these fake code books, and so they were able to pass disinformation with those code books. The Germans thinking, oh, we cracked this code, we found this guy, what are the chances? Thinking they got all this stuff, and then it was just disinformation that the English were able to feed the Germans. And all of that really happened. So there's one chapter in the story that's told from the dead guy's point of view, sort of. So but it's all based on real stuff. I didn't make it up. I was a big fan of spies, since I was a kid. My parents took me to see all the James Bond movies. Like my first drive-in theater experience was Moonraker, and which has no impact on anything I'm doing, but still, it's like one of those things. I grew up with James Bond, and I read all the Ian Fleming books, and then, but then as I started this book, I was like, there's so much spy stuff out there. I wanted to do something not like any of that. Like James Bond's fun, but it's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to do almost sort of what would it really be like to be a spy in World War II. And what would it be like to sort of live this life that's a lie, and you don't necessarily want to do it, and who are you really, and like where's the line drawn between the lie you're telling everybody for like a year at a time and who you really are. You know, at what point do you become what you're lying about? So that stuff was interesting to me more than like the James Bond and the gadgets and everything. And there's gadgets in there, but most of them backfire or don't work quite right. So that's my little nod to James Bond. And Super Spy is sort of my James Bond character in there, and he's just not that great. I'm actually doing 2 books after this. It's going to be a trilogy, and it didn't start out as a trilogy, but as I was working on it, I was like, I had an idea for a supernatural sort of ghost story, and then I have a sci-fi story that I've been working on a long time ago. So I thought, well, it'd be fun to do 2 more books and make it a trilogy, and it'll be a super trilogy. So the next book's Supernatural. It's ghost stories set in the 50s Paris. It's got the ghost of Amelia Earhart and Houdini, and then a character that dies in Super Spy, who I'm not going to blow for you, but one of those characters dies, shows up in Supernatural. So that'll be the second book, and then the third book is set in the 60s, and it's going to be science fiction, and a character will overlap in all of those books. And yeah, the 60s sci-fi one, I haven't written that one yet. It's going to be time travel. I don't know exactly what yet, so I'll let you know. It's like 2 or 3 years off.